Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Mia, and I'm really excited to have my dear friend Lindsey. Um, Lindsey and I became friends because she is my lomi practitioner, and she lives on the island in Hawaii, and she is a healer and a teacher. She works with traditional Hawaiian modalities, amongst others. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Lindsey, because I feel like I won't do justice to properly explaining like all the medicine and the magic that you share. So if you want to just do kind of a little just intro, that would be awesome. And
Okay.
thanks for joining.
Thank
Thanks
you
for being
so
here.
much. Yeah. So just to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Lindsey Shannon Kapu, and I was born in Alaska. And I moved to Hawaii as a young girl when I was about 13. So I kind of had my formative years on Oahu. And I went to college in California. And that's when I first kind of was introduced to yoga, to massage, to those type of things. So when I came back to Hawaii, I wanted to continue to study that from the perspective of this place. And I didn't know, quite how to do that. And so I, looked into classes, I looked into schools, I looked into different things, and nothing really felt right. Um, and then a chance encounter at UH Manoa, I met my teacher, my Kumu, and his name was Alva James Andrews. And, they were doing a kind of a fundraiser for trips to New Zealand. So they were giving Lomi. And, I asked, is anyone teaching? And they pointed out to Uncle. And he was over in the corner, kind of in his own little world, smoking a cigarette, doing his own thing, looking like this, gruff, unapproachable Hawaiian man. Um, but I went over there and I sat down next to him. And the moment I sat next to him, like I felt at home. It was this feeling of peace. It was this feeling of um, just finding where I was supposed to be. And so my rational brain, my Western mind is, full of questions, full of, I need to introduce myself. I need to say something. This is very awkward. But everything in my body and my spirit felt at peace and at home. And so when I finally, kind of asked him, I heard you did classes. He, told me where to come, gave me an address, when to show up. And at that time in my life, I was working at a plant nursery. So I was working with plants and I was working very heavy physically. So I was injuring myself, I had neck pain, I had back pain, and yet I was still working through it, going to work every day and just, um, but not even thinking that it mattered, and so I would notice that when I would go to class, I started going to class once a week. Monday nights, we'd go and have Lomi class, just right off the highway down by the road. And, every night after that class, the next morning when I'd wake up and I'd go to work, I would feel amazing. Like I wouldn't have, my back wouldn't hurt, my neck wouldn't hurt, like those aches and pains wouldn't be there. And then and so class was Monday night. So it would be every Tuesday. And then, then the week would go on and by like, I'd be sore, and then I'd be like, wow, every Tuesday I just wake up and I'm like, it's the Lomi class.
Mhm.
And because it was class, we were more kind of learning, talking, demonstration. Um, but Uncle would always, at some point during the class, he would put his hands on each person. Like at some time, he would demonstrate something, And so even though maybe you weren't receiving an entire massage, that energy, that healing, it was an experience, right? And he would always say, if you're here to learn massage, you're in the wrong place, you
Mhm.
know. Um, if you're here to learn to be a better human being, then, stick around. Um, it's teaching and uncovering those ancestral tools that we all have to heal ourselves and to heal our community, to make ourselves better human beings. You know, they call it like lomilomi nowadays is kind of the term. And that term was really, let's say, standardized by the university in like the 60s, you know, when they're kind of bringing Hawaiian culture back, bringing a lot of these traditions back. You know, it's kind of like lomi. Here's a term that people can use. But then that term can be like culturally appropriated, you know what I mean? And so nowadays you have the situation where, you know, there's people who come and take a weekend workshop and then they go back to wherever they're from and then they say, oh, now I'm a kahuna lomi or something like that. You know, they are really kind of stealing a part of the culture without actually, you know, having done the work. Because, you know, in the traditional kind of time period, these practices would be kind of taught from a very young age, you know, from a child would be observed sort of gravitating towards this type of work. And then they would be taken under the wing of, you know, someone within the family that could develop these skills in them. And so, you know, it's a very different way of teaching and learning compared to our Western system. So a lot of my learning and training with my Kumu was me actually unlearning a lot of the Western things that I had been taught and then tapping into my own connection with my ancestors, my spiritual guidance, you know, and then also just learning in life. You know, my my Kumu would say, you know, it's not that I'm so wise, it's that I've been around for a long time. You know, we've seen a lot. And you know, in our culture nowadays, elders are kind of discounted and you know, often separated, put aside into old folks' homes or what have you. And so we forget a lot of the importance and value and wisdom that can only be found through those long-lived humans that have seen and experienced those generational changes, right? So I guess that was kind of a large
Yeah.
introduction about
No,
myself,
I just want
but
to say, I mean, you say massage, and I wanted to say for those who are there and don't know, I don't just, I mean, when I think of your work, when I experience it, it's very different than like, you know, a massage can be, there's so many kind of experiences that now kind of fall under that. It's kind of like you were saying, people use language very loosely these days, but what I experienced with you know, your practice and what you've learned from this lineage that's ancient, I mean, it's like no other treatment that I've experienced. Although it would seem to me like I do have a friend who is a Chinese kung fu master and martial arts master and healer, and it's like he almost does a similar version as you. There's similar things that happen in the session, but they're still very different, but it feels ancient also. And it's, to me, it's like structural and energetic and intuitive, and to me, just very different than what I think people would interpret as calling massage. So I just want to share that because to me, it's like very next level ancient medicine that like I can go to see you and have, I don't know, anything kind of weird going on, and it's just you clear it right in that one session. It's really amazing. So
yeah,
I just
it is.
wanted to add
And that's what and that's what it was. And it's like I received that work from my teacher and I got to watch him, you know, touch so many people. I mean, he literally like worked on the Dalai Lama, like not like for real. And you know, when he passed, like they called from the Dalai Lama to like give their condolences. Like he was that kind of um caliber of healer. And yet the local like crackhead homeless guy down the street could come and get worked
that.
on too and feel completely safe and comfortable. It was like every single human would feel like at home and loved by that man, you know?
I love that, and that's what like I could like I like have so much emotion attached to just that experience of living in the islands and that aloha and that love that it's not, and that's exactly when you started telling your story. It's like it's so down to earth. It's not an elitist thing. It's just sharing this medicine that's our birthright as humans, and just having that open heart. And it's really special, and you feel it, we feel it here on the island. It's really like the way of the land. So it's just,
Yeah.
I'm just grateful for that. Um,
Yeah. And that, kind of ties into this, prophecies, if you will. There's a lot in Hawaii, even of kind of, the times of change and how aloha and these practices, even, we can talk about ho'oponopono and how that has become like another kind of cultural appropriation, the mantra or whatever, and at the same time as there's those issues with that, it's also the fact that such a beautiful family cultural Hawaiian tradition as ho'oponopono, that can be heard and spread, and even those ideas are sort of trickling around the whole world,
right,
is like a very amazing fact when you consider that the Hawaiian language, they tried to destroy it. It was banned. My uncle Alva told me his story of him as a child in Chinatown on Oahu, watching a man be physically um put in like a stocks and beaten in front of everyone for speaking Hawaiian. Like, so, I mean, like, that's medieval to me. That's like a medieval torture, like stocks and beaten in the public square, but no, he watched that as a child for someone speaking Hawaiian. So to go from that to now the renaissance of like Hawaiian cultural practices are being celebrated. We had the hula, the Merry Monarch is put on television across the globe. Those things are very like a triumph
yeah.
of
Hmm.
culture. So
And I
yeah.
think I think it's like that we're going through a period of where, well, I feel where there's a shift happening that we'll talk about. We'll get into all these prophecies about this time. And part of it is I think we're going to move out of polarity, and we've all been in this polarity, all cultures, even with there's the beauty and then the light and the shadow. And there's a whole conversation to be had about the Hawaiian culture, because as Lindsay and I know, there's even different lineages and waves of culture with the history on the islands, whereas there's the Ali'i, the Polynesians that came, and that changed the older Hawaiian culture, which is more what we think of as Mu, aka Lemuria. So there have just been different periods too here, and the warring and that every culture has experienced that that yuckiness. It's affected all of us. And so even with,
Well, and to tie into that a little bit, because I have it come up with my clients, right? A big thing that will come up with people is the physical issues that they're dealing with, the pain in their shoulder, the pain in their hips, the ache in their neck. These physical things a lot of times have their roots and their connection um, to things in our childhood, things in our ancestry, things, and it can go back very far. So there can be a lot, but um it's always the things that are pushed down, pushed aside, the stuff that's kept a secret, that's not talked about, that's denied, the history that's erased, we don't talk about that side of the family. We don't talk about this place that we're from, because it goes back to a lot of, there's a lot of entire lineages being wiped out, even if we're looking at, we in Hawaii, we have Kamehameha united the islands. Okay, well, he also, you know, had to take out a lot of his own family members to do that. So that's all those lineages that will no longer exist, right? And so, you know, we have that in ourselves, our own lineages, our own family members who participated in wars and conquests and all of these things, there's repercussions to that, to the generations and the stewards of the land down the line, because those things aren't really forgotten, ever, when we look at it from the perspective of the place, so even if you're not from that place, when you're on that land and you're breathing the air and you're eating from the soil and you are becoming a part of it. And so all of those streams, as well as all of those places where the peoples that you are from came from, those things are relevant, and they come up when we try to deny them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of all about witnessing and seeing and allowing and accepting all of the parts, right? All the heaviness and the shadow and the light. And that's why I love just your work, because it's you really talk about in relation to the body, and yeah, that stuff coming up to be released, because I think a lot right now, or whoever wants to take it on, it's like we're working on clearing that for the land and for our lineages, and it's part of this like shedding of like
Yes.
going through this frequency shift that like as we, Lindsay and I got into before we jumped on, it's like this time has been prophesied by kind of every lineage almost. I mean, everyone has their own language about it. I've had my personal visions about it. I'm sure many of you guys here have. And it really all is very similar, although there's of course like different language and little different perspectives. And, I was just reading, I wanted to share something I was reading yesterday that I thought was just explained it really well, because sometimes it's like, it can sound kind of airy. It's like, well, what does that mean? The frequency is shifting. And essentially, it's like the Mayans believe that Alcyone is the central star of the Pleiadian star system, and that our sun is the outermost star of the system, and that according to them, the cycle, and this is also the precession of the equinoxes, is that that's about a 26,000 year cycle, and that essentially then we move into this photon belt and this light particles, which is where you get people talking about light codes and that sort of thing, but it's actually a different, or an area of the universe, I guess, if you will, and it's a photon belt of light, a different kind of light, and that according to them, we're in that for about 2,000 years, and then out of it for 11,000. So that would be sort of a very, I know, and it's interesting because that's word of mouth from the Mayan lineage. That's not from, I mean, that is science, but it's their, science and their belief system. But that would really explain in a sort of frequency energetic way why we would have these periods in humanity that we would kind of refer to as golden ages, or kind of a dark age. And so I know that our friend Keone, who we both work with and adore, I know he specifically is talking about this as well. And in his language, it's like we're moving out of a dark age. And so they all line up in these really interesting ways. And Lindsay has, she's been had this really amazing experience in Alaska, where there's been the emergence of a white raven. And I don't know if you guys have seen, but there have been white buffalo showing up as well. I'm just getting chills. It's like so amazing.
There's like a white moose. I just saw there's like a white moose like crossing the road. Like, yeah, so many.
So like, please tell us about Lindsay, because when you said that to me, she told me when I, saw her for the last session, and I was like, oh wow, we need to talk about this. It's so special, and it's just like spirit, just like confirming,
Yeah, so magical. So, okay, I guess to sort of give a little bit of the backstory, the story of the raven was always that, the raven is the trickster, but the raven is the reason why we have the sun, right? The raven, stole the stars and put them in the sky, and then he stole the moon, and then he stole the sun. But because the sun was so hot, in the process of stealing it, he was originally this beautiful white, very majestic bird, and then he got all charred and black. And so that's the story of, how Raven, why the raven is black. So, there's many different versions, and there's kind of a lot of hidden meanings in those stories. So if you look into, maybe the specifics of, each tribe and, their own version of the story, and kind of what can be encoded in that. But to take a sort of more personal perspective for me and in my own life and how what it meant to me is for the past about 3 or 4 years, I've been going up to Alaska to take care of my grandfather. And my grandfather was, in his late 90s, mid 90s, but he was a history teacher. So my whole life, he was probably, the greatest influence, just as far as, studying history, reading books, just having that curiosity. And he didn't teach history as in, I know everything. He taught history as in, you need to go study, because the reality of it is most of the things are destroyed, and the people who won the battle, who won the war, are going to tell it their way. And so if you want to find out, the truth of it, you're going to have to go and dig a little deeper and, look at who's the one saying it. So, this was my grandpa my whole life. I felt, was such an influence for how I viewed the world. And so with the routine with my grandpa was, we go to the coffee shop, we drive to, the library, we go feed the ducks, we look at the birds. So when my grandpa passed away was right around the time that the white raven sightings began.
Wow. Oh.
So when I'm back in Alaska to go and visit for my grandpa's funeral, and I'm driving around to all the same spots that we would go and visit, there's the white raven.
Wow.
And it would be like every time I would just know, I was like, we're going to drive down the street and the raven's going to be there. And it would be, and not just for me, and so there's a white raven Facebook page. If you want to go, photographers, there's probably 40,000 people that are on that page. Photographers came from all over the world to like take pictures of this white raven. And, you know, uh, there was one post where someone said that, they were in a very deep depression and like alcoholic and just very down, suicidal. And one day they saw the raven like earlier, and they sort of changed everything in their life and had like a complete like turnaround because of this, and then they're posting this on the thing, so many just beautiful stories. So like, it's connects to these prophecies, to this time where, we are returning to that purity, we're returning to just to the connection with our family. And, that's the concept, the Hawaiian concept of ohana and family. It's not just, my mom, my dad, my kids. It's like, no, it's all of my relations, which is, it's the raven, it's the butterfly, it's the grass, it's the water, it's the mountains, it's the people on the other side of the world, it's my ancestors, all those are my family. And so many of these prophecies, that's why they are encoded differently in different parts of the world, because they have to be able to trigger different states of remembrance, right? But because we're all so we are part of the human family, right? I think it's like a Dalai Lama quote, our creator only has one child and his name is humanity. Right? We are all that that human family. And so these stories are really, for me, it's like, it's these visual, real manifestations of our prayers, um, of our guidance. And so I just think there's going to be more and more of these type of things. And so the Raven's gone right now. She or he is either off nesting or has disappeared, or we don't know, right? So it's all for a brief amount of time where these messages and these guides come to us.
Yeah.
So
Oh
yeah.
my God, I still have chills. Like, Lindsey, thank you for sharing that. That's like so special about your grandfather. I didn't know that. And thanks for sharing that. That's so special. And I love what you said about how, yes, it's like each message is encode. It's like encode. It's like a code. It's encoding. It's meant to like break open the heart of those that are ready for that. So that's why, the Christian, those that are Christian have their version. And it's not about getting into the details. It's like exactly what you said. It's like it's meant to like inspire the hearts of like those who it's language for in their lineage or their community, whatever it is. And I think it's really about like we've gotten so used to we're moving in out of, hierarchy and into out of that era of the guru and into like what is your heart telling you. So it's like ushering us into like, okay, yes, appreciating all these prophecies and then seeing these signs, and that's amazing. And then also like, what are you guys getting personally? Because we all have dreams and visions. And I know for me, I started really honoring that more and like slowing down and writing things down from my dreams or visions, and just kind of trusting that language more because we each have our own language of like this too. I had a dream maybe like 6 months ago or a little more now about it was so beautiful, and it was in the dream, it was kind of like we'd moved through this portal, I'll call it, of ascension, or the war is over. We've just moved through this kind of like time of transition, and we were celebrating that on this mountain, and there were all of these rainbow clouds in the sky, and it was like so beautiful. It was almost like shimmery rainbow whole sky. And I woke up and I was like, wow, that was a really powerful dream. And I wrote it down. And then, in the last few months or whatever, there have been these sightings of those rainbow clouds everywhere. And people have been posting all this imagery. And I was like, oh my God, that was a sign to me from spirit. And so it's like, just what are you being invited to tap more into too? What's there for you? And for us to get, like Lindsey, like we were talking about earlier, to get out of that mode of just looking to the television for information or outside, because I think it's meant to draw us all back into ourselves and into community, into lineage, into more of a word of mouth and these real conversations about what's going on, because we're learning through this time too, since the frequency is rising, anything that's not true is kind of dissolving. So we're having all these revelations about about history, like what your grandfather told you. There's so many lies. We don't really know what we thought we did, and we're having to together kind of put these pieces together and go through this like adventure of discovery. So it's so
Yeah, I think
interesting.
that is the big kind of the big work that I see a lot of people having to do right now. And especially in my own life, I've been losing a lot of elders. I've been losing, I lost my Kumu, back in 2015. And so that was kind of but he really prepared me for his loss. He was preparing me for his transition. And when he did transition, I felt him even more strongly. It was like I've never experienced that. And it made me understand so much. And so that was like really a pivotal moment in my own ability to connect. And now I can get the messages from him. I can be open to
Yeah.
that, and not just him, my own ancestors. But if you're blocked off from that, which is like so many of us, in our modern world, we're blocked off from that whole other realm of connection. And that really is where we have so many resources and so much help, and for so many people, they say, well, I don't know who my ancestors are, I don't know them, and they know you, right? That's the key, is you might
Yeah.
not know them, but they know you, and they are there to resource, if
Yeah.
you're
If you're
prepared.
open to it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I think that's like the veil, because the way that I interpret this shift is also essentially um that we're moving up in density, so we're going to be vibrating higher. So in a sense, that's why people say, oh, the veil is going away, so then we're going to be more easily able to connect with the ancestors or the spirit realm. And so I'm just trying, for myself, it's like, okay, I'm just like letting them know that I'm available for that, because I'm adopted, so I'm not directly in contact with my blood lineage. And so but I can connect with them in the way that you're talking about if I open up to that. So that's what my intention is right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And a big part of that too, I know in my own research, when I was looking at my own family tree, that really started to uncover all of these things that just didn't quite add up and didn't quite make sense. Things having to do with the railroad, or things having to do with architecture, or things, and we can get into that other thing. And the same thing when I was doing a lot of research at the Bishop Museum on Oahu, and looking at different kind of historical situations from Dr. Judd. I don't know if you're familiar, but he was the doctor of all the
Mhm.
kings and queens in the kingdom, all the kings and queens that, started dropping dead and such. So, there's kind of a lot of very interesting historical um yeah, things from that time period, especially the early 1800s, that, we in the COVID age
Yeah.
are having the direct repercussions of, what was going on back then. And if you start looking at your own family history, the receipts start showing up basically
Yeah.
to the.
So I want to just clarify what I feel that you're talking about. So
Yeah,
I what I get is that we had a reset around then, maybe the late
yeah,
1700s, early 1800s, a reset, where, and this is when people talk about Tartaria or there's a new wave of uncovering hidden history. It's really about these resets that I think were, some may have been natural, but I feel that one was artificially created by those in power to essentially take control, right? So
yeah.
then that's kind of cut us off from a lot of our lineage, like you're saying, Lindsay, and then they put them in a power position to put systems into place that were um not good for the people, essentially. So that happened to everywhere, but that definitely
And
happened.
yeah, and the
Why?
trauma of that is like alive in people's bodies now. Like the trauma of your great grandmother being sent off to a mental
Yeah.
institution, which all
Yeah.
those things, which what was that mental institution before it was made a mental institution? What were
Right.
those Indian boarding schools with all the dead bodies of children around side them? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what was
Yeah.
that about?
What were those? Because these are, and I have a really deep connection to this because my mother was put in one of those. So my birth mother. So when she was pregnant with me, and these mental institutions that are, they're like these palaces.
Yeah.
And at that time, it's like, okay, so with the narrative, like, okay, it's like the early 1800s, things are just getting started. There's not that many people in these towns, but there's this palatial mental institution. Did we need that? It's like, what is that, right? So seems like there were other things going on. We don't know who really built these buildings. There's like so much to it, but I really get that, like, this is also all coming up right now because we're about to go. I don't want to call it a reset because I don't think I think we're going through this frequency shift, and the way I interpret it, the powers, I'll say that were, because I don't think they're in power anymore, know that there are these cycles and these times, and I believe that they wanted to do another reset right now because they knew that the frequency was rising and they wanted to stay in power, but it's just not up to them. I think
Just not working
God's
out quite
decided
right.
it's not working out. We're not having that sort of reset again. But as like a result of all this energy shifting, we're totally awakening to our true history, which is that those have happened and that we have been cut off from the truth, and it's all coming out. And that is like, I mean, I'm so excited about it. I'm so ready for all this, but also it's like, it is really intense and it can be really, really overwhelming to realize all of a sudden, if it's new, that like, oh my gosh, everything we've been
I was lied to,
lied
or
to
like, yeah,
about like everything.
everything. Yeah, a lot, a lot.
A lot.
And see, that is sort of the history though of the world that you'll see, is that there was always small groups of people who carried the truth, if we want to call it like the aloha spirit, if we want to call it, I don't know if you've ever been to Costa Rica, they're like pura vida, it's like, what would Southern hospitality if you go in the South, like whatever it is, there are those people that really hold that, love in their hearts and are just good, genuine people. And throughout history, often those people who are holding just like the knowledge of how to live a peaceful life. It's not like we're talking about magic or anything. We're just talking about the knowledge on how to live a peaceful, whole, and happy life. Those people have been like systematically persecuted and enslaved and like had to flee on ships across the ocean, like you see that time even in Hawaii, like that's the story, it's like they came here to escape. And then, centuries later, the Tahitians came to impose yet again, like the bloodthirsty kind of systems. So, it is to say that so many of our ancestors really gave their lives to perpetuate the things that now we're in the time that we can bring them alive, that we can, see and hear what they could only have dreamt of. And so it's such a beautiful time. And that's why there is that excitement for me, as much as there's like, it's going to be difficult. Like there's the difficulties of how the transition plays out. I think it's really, when I feel into it, it's so beautiful. It's so, so joyful.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we just approach it with like trust and curiosity and know that like this is what we've all prayed for in our hearts and our ancestors, this freedom, this stepping into sovereignty as people and getting to live naturally again. Like, yes, like things are gonna fall apart, but like it's okay. Like we don't want these things. And like there are some systems already in place, but then we're gonna build a lot of them together. And it's like that's like amazing.
And our historical birthright is, so much more than we know. There's a lot of things that have been kept from us as far as our, abilities or whatever. What we would say is like, or what has been deemed as like magical or like fairy tales or all of that is actually, scientific and reality if you're
yes.
open to it,
I like calling it spirit technology, but yeah, like
Right.
technology, because I mean, I'm so excited because we're moving into an era where we're actually having a little event in California. I don't know if I told you, Lindsay, but on the 16th of May, we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff that's been suppressed and hidden, like actual tech, like free energy that is being released soon for humanity. But then also it's like the spirit technology, because technology it's all spirit technology. It's just some of it has been kind of like created like they've like like the internet, we have our own internet. We're telepathic, truly, right? So it's like there's there's like the spirit tech and then the overlay. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, I feel like we're going to have some of both. Like we'll have some of these like expansive technologies, but then we're also going to get totally more in tune with what you're saying, like our actual gifts that we have that have been suppressed. And we've been in like a frequency wars for eons, essentially. So a lot of this stuff, like the frequency is rising, so it's going to be easier, but also like we're not going to have these energetic electromagnetic sort of like warfare either, because there have been those things put into our environments purposely to help keep frequency lower too, and
And
that's
I
gone.
think that's where like the big kind of work and purpose of for everyone is going to come in that like connection to the land, connection to the rivers and the ocean and the animals, because that is going to really give us back that the proper frequencies that we need, right? We can all feel the difference between like, a beautiful flowing stream and like a cement drainage ditch. I mean, like, we all can feel the difference of what that feels like. And so, a lot of, there's gonna be a lot of reconstruction of,
Yeah,
how we how we remake things to be
totally.
more pono is the word, the Hawaiian word is like this pono, this righteousness, this real harmony and peace.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I love that. I also just remembered, I don't know, I don't know, it's a beautiful place to maybe leave it up, but I don't know if you know the night rainbow. I'm sure you do, but I wrote this down yesterday too, because I was thinking about all of this and I was like, oh my gosh, that's just another beautiful like of the land here prophecy. And so the night rainbow is like, I don't know if you guys have seen one. It's like kind of like a white rainbow in the night in the sky. It's so special. And to the Hawaiians, as I understand it, it's called the spirit rainbow, and it's rare, and that there's no other greater blessing on earth, that it signals a time of unity, time for family, reawakening or renewal for those in body. I think of it as like a celebration of wonder and of innocence. And I've just been so, that's just has been coming to me again and again in the last few years. And the last time that the volcano erupted, where we live in a live volcano, you guys, basically. The last time it erupted, on Mauna Loa, there was a really beautiful night rainbow, and I felt like that one was such a positive shift. I mean, to me, I don't know, you felt it felt like a sign in itself, that eruption. No one was harmed,
Yeah.
so no one, nothing, no homes were destroyed or anything. It was just a really beautiful experience. And then there was the white rainbow, and I was like, oh yes.
Yeah. Wait, I'm gonna be 1 second. Let me. So this is the book. Wait, let's see. Is it gonna okay.
You have to hold it close. I can see his face. Yeah,
Wait.
I think you.
Tales of the Night Rainbow. Why is it
Oh
okay?
yeah.
Wait,
Oh
wait,
yes, now I
wait.
can see it. You have to hold it to your body, I think.
Okay, hold it to
Oh
my
my gosh,
body.
this is yes, this
This
is
is the
yes.
book.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So Tales of the Night Rainbow by Polly J. Lee and Coco Willis.
Oh,
So this book is like not in print. Like it's really hard to
so
get, but this
special.
is like my favorite book in like everywhere. And I actually saw a night rainbow once. It was like maybe I don't know, like 15 years ago or something, and up in North Hilo, and I just happened to be at this like house party or whatever, and I went outside and I saw the night rainbow, and it was like one of the most beautiful things ever. And it was so interesting because I actually ran back into the house and I like tried to tell everyone. I was like, there's this like rainbow outside and I've never seen anything like it. And like nobody, they were drinking.
It was
They didn't
only
want
for
anything.
you.
No,
Only for
no, but
you.
one other person came out with me, and just me and this random person who I never met. We just sat there and just watched, and it was just there for like, I don't know, maybe like a half an hour, because it was like the rain and the
Wow.
moon at the
Yeah.
full moon was shining in the rain, and it was just like this perfect night rainbow. And yeah, I will never forget that. So I
Mm.
definitely, and that eruption tying back really to the 2018 eruption,
Mhm.
right? Like that huge eruption, that whole eruption I felt was like a massive prophecy brought to life in a certain extent, because, when you look back at the stories and the chants of like the big eruptions that, those were like 700 years ago, 800 years ago, 11,000 years ago, all of those same
Mhm.
um events that you hear about, that the pink cloud and the rumbling of the ground and all these things, like we felt that in real life, like real time, like we witnessed these things that like
Mhm.
have been
Yeah.
immortalized in chants for generations so that our generation could see those signs. And so I mean, I was so grateful that I took one of the boats out when the lava was like going and like totally covering like all of Puna, and
Mhm.
I took the boat out, and to see the whole, I mean, essentially an entire Ahupua'a of island just on fire. I mean, it was the most otherworldly experience. And then to just everything, all those places that we loved, right? I mean, that I loved, the champagne ponds, I mean, the forest and the noni trees, the kamani trees. I mean, just so much beauty that I loved, and just to see it all on fire, and rivers of lava, fountains of lava. I mean, and the feeling that I felt was just like watching watching a birth.
Mhm.
I thought I would have been more sad. I thought I would have been more um I thought I was going to feel different, but I felt this complete and utter um like awe and just submission and like gratitude to be witness to it, right? And so for me, that, and then between that happening and then what happened with Mauna Kea, and really the whole world coming together and standing up and saying no more telescopes on our sacred mountain, like this has got to stop, like those really for me were the things of showing the whole world this birth and this new way of being, way of living, that kapu aloha, that new kapu that was brought to be of, standing for unconditional love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I just want to add that it's hard to put into words and it's hard to really express for those who weren't able to be there, but it's worth trying. But I never experienced the feeling with a group of people that I did from when the Mauna Kea protests were happening. And I don't even like that word because that's kind of my point is it wasn't a protest. And protests, especially in this day and age, well, it's kind of being revealed now that a lot of these things are um created, manufactured in a sense, and weaponized. And this was not that. This was like a true coming together of like a community, and it called back so many people were called back to the island who are from here and don't live here anymore. It was a true community of it's like of standing for something. And it's that saying of like um you don't want to fight against something, you want to stand for something. That's the energetic you want to be in. And it was so strong in that, in such a high frequency of love and true just belonging and just embracing everyone who was there in this just like very, very, very deep um just feeling of like beauty. I mean, it was I could cry. I mean, it was like very special. And I know that those who got to experience that, had that same impression. And that's like the beauty. I mean, that's just maybe beautiful to end it on too. It's like that's the beauty of this island and this place, and what I think Hawaii has to share with the world, that aloha, that like, no, we can do things differently, actually, and we will do them and we will show you. Just
Yeah.
really quietly. Just see.
Yeah.
Just come
Yeah.
see.
Just
You
come
know,
see.
it can be different. This is the way. And
Yeah. And what was so beautiful to me about being up there on the Mauna was seeing people come from all over the world. There was groups from, I don't know, New Guinea, New Zealand, Europe, Asia. I mean, everywhere they came and brought gifts, from their own lands and stories of their own fights for their own. I mean, and tying back to so many of the prophecies, Mauna Kea is
Sorry, can you say that again? We lost you for a
Um,
second.
so going back to Mauna Kea being that like that umbilical cord, like that pico, almost that center of everything. And so, having that energetic really gift given to the world, because so
Yeah.
many
Mhm.
people watched it on social media. Do you know what I mean? It was like it went around the world, this example of aloha, and not just like a hula show, that's being marketed by Hollywood, like not any of that, but like the true rooted culture. um and kind of going back a little to some of the things, a lot of it goes back to, once we look at these ancient maps and, ancient histories, how the navigators, sailed across the Pacific. And, even if you look at like the diaries of Captain Cook, he's a problematic figure, but there's a lot of history in looking at you know, the trade routes and the migration routes and all of those things for us to really understand where we are now and what um, what each place needs to really function. Because what we need in Hawaii to like take care of the land and take care of the resources is very different from what they can do on the continent in California or in New York or in, Canada. It has to be, all of our solutions have to be tied and connected and rooted um, to that place. And so I think that is another kind of big step that's coming for everyone to really be able to tap into that spiritual connection to the land, spiritual connection to the living creatures around them, so that this kind of rebuilding process can happen holistically. Because without that, if there's that spiritual disconnect, we're only going to get, the effect that we get. You get the trash, you get um, the complications because of that spiritual disconnect. And, tying back into the massage, to the work, to the stuff on the table, it always goes back to the spiritual. So every, physical manifestation, it started with that spiritual disconnect. It went into disordered thinking and misaligned emotions, right? And then it's our body, last of all, that ends up crying out. But without addressing that disconnect, that spiritual issue, our the outcome will never change. Yeah. So that's the big, the work that we do, whether it's on the massage table or it's like in the, planting in the lo'i, or, cleaning up the, ocean, cleaning up the beach trash, all of those things. It's under that philosophy of lomilomi and that way of thinking in which we're trying to, optimize the harmony and the peace and the balance. Yeah. So
Okay. Mm, yes, totally. All about balance and
tie it back in
harmonizing.
there. Yep.
Harmonizing. Oh my God. Harmonizers. Oh, thank you,
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, it's so fun talking. We'll have to do this again because there's so much I know because
There's so much
a
we
lot
didn't
of time
even
together. Yes, I know. We have amazing conversations always. So we'll have to do this again. And I'll put Lindsay, I'll put all of your details below. So if you guys want to get in touch, you'll know where to. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This was great. And thanks so much, you guys, for joining us. Aloha.
Aloha.